go ahead and get started. We're picking up where we left off on the PDF. It's page 19. It's round line 555. Kind of interestingly, if you kind of compare the play Antigone with the play Oedipus the King, 555, Antigone says in response to Creon, what more do you want than my arrest and execution? And in Oedipus the King, Creon asks Oedipus, lines 698 and following, or 697, what do you want? You want me banished? No, I want you dead. What more do you want than my arrest and execution? Nothing. There's a nice little parallel or continuation of the same kinds of thoughts between what Antigone says and what Creon says in the earlier play. Okay? So, Creon, nothing. I want your arrest and execution. Then I have everything. Antigone, then why delay? In other words, why are you still talking? Why not carry out that execution? Your moralizing repels me. Well, his previous real long speech is all about what? Strongest wills fall the hardest, traitors deserve the worst punishment, etc. She says, your moralizing repels me. Every word you say, pray God, it always will. That is, now she's not necessarily saying to Creon, pray to God that your moralizing will. She's saying, help me see that your moralizing will always be repulsive. Is just hearing his voice, essentially. Enough. And then she says again, glory. She emphasizes first his moralizing, and then she goes back to her desire for glory. Give me glory, line 561. What greater glory could I win than to give my own brother decent burial? These citizens here would all agree. And notice she motions to them. They would praise me too. Now, would in this context is what's called the verb. It's called a modal auxiliary. That is, you have to use it to express the verb that you want to express. What does she mean? If they had free will, if they had free voices, they desire, they wish to stand with me, to agree with me. They would praise me too if their lips weren't locked in fear. The only reason they don't say anything, Creon, is what do they think Creon will do? He'll kill them just as much as he'd kill her. And then she points to Creon. Lucky tyrants, the perquisites of power. Okay? If you remember from Oedipus the King, when Oedipus accuses Creon of plotting against him, Creon's response is, why would I want to do that? Because he doesn't use these three words, perquisites of power, but everything he says describes those. I have all the perks of power without any of the responsibilities. Antigone is looking at him and saying, tyrants what? All tyrants have the perks of power, meaning they could do whatever they want. No one's going to challenge them. Ruthless power to do and say whatever pleases them. Creon, you're the only one who thinks that way. Antigone, no. And so they go back and forth. Creon, aren't you ashamed to differ so from them? That is, aren't you ashamed to, let's use a good modern term that's bandied about in politics all over. Aren't you ashamed to be out of the mainstream? What's mainstream mean? Stream, first of all, like a river of water, the mainstream, the dominant one. And so to be out of this means what? What does a river of water do? If it's a river, it's flowing, right? Out of the mainstream means, and so it's flowing this direction. Out of the mainstream means to be going the other direction. The mass, Crayon is saying, of public sentiment is flowing this way. And she's stopping or standing in the middle of it, trying to go the other direction. And he's saying, you should be ashamed. What? To have ideas that are so far outside the common ideas. See? 2,500 years old and still totally relevant for our world. Antigone, not ashamed for a moment, not to honor my brother, my own flesh and blood. What is she suggesting? What would Antigone say in response to the question, what's the most important thing or aspect of society? Or another way of putting that, what are all human societies based upon? What's the smallest unit? Louder. Family. You don't have a society without families, because the groups of families are what create that kind of community. So she's saying, no, if it's to honor my flesh and blood, then that's the most important thing. Crayon throws a nice little wrinkle in. Wasn't Eteocles a brother too? Cut down, facing him. What's he really getting at? What's his point? If you honor Polynices, he's thinking kind of in a logical sense. What does that do to or for Eteocles? Doesn't that kind of dishonor him? She says, you're right, he was. Brother, yes, by the same mother, the same father. Then how can you render his enemy such honors, such impieties? She says Eteocles would never say that. Not buried, dead and buried. In other words, Antigone's trying to express the notion that things in this world or societal traditions in this world do not apply in quote unquote the other world. It's a different, possibly, one way of looking at it, a different morality here than there, or another way of looking at it, there is a deeper or higher, choose whichever of those terms you want, morality that unites the two. And that is respect for the dead. Even if the dead are your enemies. I mentioned the other day the story of the Iliad where Priam of Troy goes to Achilles to beg for Hector's body so that he can be properly buried. And he finally gets through, and even Achilles allows that. Crayon, he will if you honor the traitor just as much as him, but it was his brother, not some slave. And they go back and forth. Crayon, Antigone, 587. Crayon, who on the earth can say the ones below don't find this pure and uncorrupt? Who, she's saying here, can say or prove that those below, the dead, don't find what she's doing pure and uncorrupt? Do you have a channel to the dead? Can you speak to the dead? Crayon? Crayon. Never. Never. Once an enemy, never a friend. Not even after death. And yet, in some Greek works of literature where we do see the underworld, we do see enemies side by side in death. No longer enemies. For the simple reason that they realized when they were up here, they were stupid. Being enemies, being at war, only gets you what? Dead. Okay? Antigone, I was born to join in love, not hate. That is my nature. And you have a nice little, footnote about the verbs used in that line. I'm not going to talk about it. So Crayon says, fine, then go down below and love, meaning die. If love you must. Love the dead. While I'm alive, and now Crayon gets to the real point of what's bothering him. While I'm alive, no woman is going to lord it over me. Remember when the other day, we talked about that passage where he says, line 541, I am not the man, not now. She is the man if this victory goes to her and she goes free. So he's protecting his masculinity, he thinks. He thinks. Ismene comes in, under guard. Okay? You too? Crayon essentially says, Ismene, yes, I did it. Did she do it? No, she had nothing to do with it. In fact, Antigone told her, even if you try to change your mind, I'm not going to let you. Antigone, no. 605, justice will never suffer that. And notice, in our translation, justice gets capitalized. Because that might be referring to, in the ancient Greek, might be referring to this almost personified, deified idea of justice. You were unwilling. I never brought you in. Meaning, you never joined my conspiracy. Is meaning. But now you face such dangers, and she's implying you shouldn't face them alone. Antigone, who did the work? Who got caught? What's Antigone concerned with? She's not going to share her glory. It's her glory. She's the one who challenged the law. She's the one who's challenged the state. Not Ismene. Ismene, this would be an example of, to use another modern term, false valor. When somebody claims to have done something militarily and never actually did it. We've had people run for, be elected to Congress and stuff who have said, for example, I fought in the Vietnam War, and they were never in the Vietnam War. They were never even in the military during the Vietnam War, right? Let the dead and the God of death bear witness. What is she saying? That's an oath. She's swearing by the dead and the God of death. They will do what? They will be the witnesses. Not in a trial here on earth. In the trial down below. She's saying, Ismene, you can't win that trial. I have no love for a friend who loves in words alone. So she says, Ismene, don't reject me, etc., etc. Antigone, never share my dying. Don't lay claim to what you never touched. My death will be enough. Okay? They talk back and forth. I'm going to skip a bunch. Ismene says, what can I do to help you? 623 or so. Antigone, save yourself. I don't grudge you your survival. She doesn't hate her sister. Okay? No, denied my portion in your death. You chose to live. I chose to die. It's as simple as that. Okay? Your wisdom appealed to one world, Antigone says. What kind of wisdom did Ismene have or show? According to Antigone. It's the wisdom of this world. You can't challenge the state. The state's all powerful. Moreover, you're just a woman. That's one wisdom. Antigone's wisdom is, I'm going to follow the unwritten, unshakable laws of the gods. Okay? Ismene, we're both guilty. But look, we're both guilty, both condemned to death. Is she saying that to Antigone or to Creon? I mean, ostensibly it's both. But I think it's kind of more towards Creon. She's going to stop debating her sister because her sister's not going to share this. So Creon, kill us both. Creon, they're both mad. What does mad mean? Crazy. It's not angry. They're both out of their minds. They are insane. One's just shown it, Ismene. The other's been that way since she was born. Something's been wrong with Antigone all along. Which is kind of interesting because we're going to find out very shortly who is Antigone engaged to? His son. I don't know about you. I've got 2 daughters. One of them's married. If the other one decides to get married, I'm not going to, even though she'll be in her 20s or 30s, whatever, I can't say I'm not going to let, but I would probably do everything I could to make sure she doesn't marry somebody who's crazy, certifiable. Okay? Ismene, true, my king, the sense we were born with cannot last forever. The sense you're born with is what kind of sense? It's here, a physical, above ground. Commit cruelty on a person long enough and the mind begins to go. Deny people their what? Inalienable rights? And they'll start to do crazy things. So she has just done something that probably in Creon's mind would merit capital punishment. What's she done? She's made an accusation against him. Yours did. That is, you lost your mind when you chose to commit your crimes with her. Okay? So, he and she go back and forth a little bit, and Ismene then raises the question. You'd kill your son's bride? Yeah. There are other fields for him to plow, other women in the world. Okay? She says, yeah, but none is true. As close a bond as theirs. So that's implying what about their marriage or intended marriage? Is it a marriage of convenience? Is it a marriage of kind of political diplomacy? The implication is this is true love. They really love each other. So, Ismene says he's not in the room yet, but she's addressing him anyways. Dearest Haman, your father wronged you. Stop. Okay? Creon says. You're going to rob your son of Antigone. No, death will. He goes on. Okay? So it's settled then. Top of the next page. By the leader of the chorus. Notice the leader really only intrudes when he kind of wants to ask either a pointed question, one thing, or in Oedipus the king, straddle the fence, try to take both sides. So it's settled then. Antigone must die. What did the proclamation say? What did Creon's decree say? You bury Polynices. If you even mourn for Polynices, you're dead. What's the leader just done? Asked a question. So you sure about this? You really want to do this? What's the leader giving Creon that Creon gave Antigone when she was first brought in? Yeah, there's a big open door. Just walk right through it. This is your way to save yourself. Yes, we both know that. Not so clear that the chorus does. So Creon says to the guards, stop wasting time, take them in, From now on, they'll act like women. Meaning, come on, be sexist. They'll be submissive. They'll shut their mouths. They'll do what they're told. That's what he means. They will not challenge the state, meaning me. Because he's going to say in a few moments that I am the state. Okay? So the guards escort Antigone and his many into the palace, and we get the chorus. Blessed they are the truly blessed who all their lives have never tasted devastation. For others, so who are those who have never tasted devastation? Anybody in here never tasted devastation? Never had crap happen in your life? Because that's kind of what's meant. It doesn't mean total annihilation. For others, once the gods have rocked the house to its foundations, the ruin will never cease. And the poet is alluding, Sophocles is alluding to the old myth of Oedipus and Laius and their whole house. In the myth, the story goes back generations. This family is screwed up. And so what happens? That screwed upness kind of gets passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation. Why does Faulkner have Sardi run away? What's he doing in running away? He's breaking that old fierce pull of blood. He's trying to put all of his or her, in that case his, past behind him. The chorus is saying, once the gods have kind of marked your family, you're screwed. You're just forever. There's nothing you can do. Okay? And they go on and on. Line 678, Zeus, yours is the power of Zeus. What man on earth can override it? Who can hold it back? Who can stop the power of Zeus? Nobody down here. Okay? Haman comes in. And the leader says, or the chorus says, here's Haman now. The last of all your sons. Crayons. Does he come in tears for his bride, his doomed bride? Bitter at being cheated of their marriage? See, they've not been married yet. We'll soon know better than seers could tell us. So he turns to his son. You've heard the final verdict on your bride? You coming now raving against your father? Meaning, are you going to turn against me too? Or do you love me no matter what I do? What does that tell us about Crayon? Have you ever known anybody, have you ever seen a TV show, a movie, etc., that has a character that says one of two things? You either love me no matter what, or you're an enemy. That's a narcissist, folks. I mean, that's somebody who is in love with himself and who doesn't think that anything he does is wrong. Okay? Haman, I'm your father. I'm your son. In your wisdom, you set my bearings for me. That is, you set me on the proper path. You provided the guidelines for my life. I obey you. No marriage could ever mean more to me than you. So, if at some point you get married or you're engaged and your fiance says lines like this, yeah, exactly. Shake your head no and just calmly walk away. Whatever good direction you may offer. Crayon, way to go, son. That's how you ought to feel within your heart. Subordinate to your Father's will in every way. Now, it's a little different between us and this family, because this family is what? And I don't mean, related to Oedipus and all that kind of stuff. What does Crayon have that none of us have? What is Crayon that none of us will ever be at this point? King. Kings have responsibilities that we don't have. Princes, sons to kings, have responsibilities that we will never have. Okay? That's why, years ago, laws had been changed a bit. Prince Charles could not marry, at the time, the woman he loved, who he's now married to. He was having an affair with her. She was, I don't remember if she was divorced at the time or not. But before he married Diana, he was in love with Camilla Parker Bowles, the current consort, King Charles's wife. Okay? He married Diana because Mama essentially made him. And because she had a claim to royal blood through the Spencer family, etc. Camilla Parker Bowles, not a lick of royal blood in her. All right? That's what he's getting at. Okay? You should subordinate you, the prince, your will to mine as the king. Princes today can't really do what they want to do. Witness the other prince, not William, his brother. He essentially got kicked out of the family because of not trying to do what he wanted to do. So, that's what a man prays for, to produce good sons, a household full of them. How does he define good sons? Dutiful and attentive, so they can pay his enemy back with interest and match the respect their father shows his friend. That's it. Good sons are sons who stand up for their father and do what their father wants. Okay? So he tells his son, this is, kind of like pre-wedding advice. It's not good, by the way. 7:23 or so. Haman, never lose your sense of judgment over a woman. The warmth, the rush of pleasure, it all goes cold in your arms. I warn you, a worthless woman in your house, a misery in your bed. Women, it's like he's saying, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. What wound cuts deeper than a loved one turned against you? Now, it's kind of interesting that another character in the play isn't yet on the stage. Crayon's wife. I just me, I kind of think if he said, never lose your sense of judgment over a woman, Eurydice, his wife, was there, probably wouldn't be a nice scene. Let the girl go, let her find a husband down among the dead. And so he says, look what happened. I caught her in naked rebellion. Not she being naked, the rebellion was naked. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't a conspiracy. It's like she went out in broad daylight. She literally did. Okay? So he says, I'm not going to prove myself a liar, not to my people. No, I'm going to kill her. Notice what's important. If he's not going to prove himself a liar, then what's he going to retain for and in himself? It's this. They're both defending their own sense of personal glory. So he says, let her cry, let her sing hymns to Zeus, etc. If I bring up, 737, if I bring up my own kin to be rebels, think what I'd suffer from the world at large. Meaning, if I can't control what happens in my own house, what are people outside going to say? People outside, other countries. other kings. If he can't control a daughter-in-law, how's he going to lead an army? Show me the man who rules his household well. I'll show you someone fit to rule the state. Okay? But he goes on, whoever steps out of line, violates the laws, that person needs to die. Anarchy, 752. Show me a greater crime in all the earth. What does anarchy literally mean? The A-N means no, not, against, un. Archy refers to hierarchy, order. Really just refers to order. Against order, unorder, disorder. In a monarchical system of government, a kingship or a queenship, what happens when there's anarchy? French Revolution. Kill the king and queen. If you know anything about the French Revolution, what happened after, the Bloody Spring, 1798, I think it was, something like that. There was real anarchy. Okay? Robespierre and his goons thought they would become the top of French society. In other words, you just replace one king with another. You don't call him a king, you call him something else. And what happened to that? That got overturned, and eventually Napoleon became king. In other words, anarchy, if left to go, doesn't produce, a society where everybody loves each other and we hug each other and we share everything in peace and love and rock and roll. It produces what? Zombie land, where everybody's out to get what they want, period. Anarchy, notice how he feminizes anarchy. She destroys cities, rips up houses, breaks the ranks of spearmen into a headlong rout. So what do we need? Discipline. The ones who lasted out, the great mass of them, owe their lives to discipline. Therefore, we must defend the men who live by law. Never let some woman triumph over us. If fall we must at the hands of a man, never be rated inferior to a woman. Never. Leader, you seem to say what you have to say with sense. Why does the leader say you seem? Seem is what's called a subjunctive verb. It indicates a condition contrary to fact. Okay? Donald Trump seems to be a very humble person. Yeah, I see eyes going, what? Why? Because that's a condition contrary to fact. No one has ever accused Trump of being humble. How do we know? Just look at everything he does. It's all about me, 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 me. Okay? Whatever one's politics. You seem to say what you have to say with sense. Means it indicates a condition contrary to fact. It's not a fact that what he says with sense. Haman, Father, only the gods endow man with reason, the finest of all their gifts, a treasure. Far be it from me, I haven't the skill, certainly no desire to tell you when, if ever you make a slip in speech, though someone else might have a good suggestion. And I think Haman there, if I were directing it, Haman ought to look to the chorus. Come on, guys. Speak up. Of course, it is not for you in the normal run of things to watch whatever men say or do or find to criticize. It's not for you to listen, to walk out in the streets and listen to what everybody is saying. Why? Because he's got to run the city. So what does Haman go on to say? The man in the street, dreads your glance. He'd never say anything displeasing to your face. But it's for me to catch the murmurs in the dark. What murmurs? What does Haman say the people are saying quietly? Louder.
They're disagreeing with Crayon.
Putting it mildly. They disagree with Crayon's order. They disagree with Crayon's decision to execute Antigone. No woman, they say, ever deserved death less. And such a brutal death for such a glorious action. And they don't mean glorious in the sense that Antigone means it. They mean moral action. She is following the unwritten, unshakable traditions and laws of the gods. Death, top of 28, 783. She deserves a glowing crown of gold. So they say, Dad, that's not me saying that, just recounting. I rejoice in your success, nothing more precious to me, etc. What medal of honor, blah, blah. Whoever thinks, 791, whoever thinks that he alone possesses intelligence, the gift of eloquence, he and no one else, and character too, you're going to find that kind of person to be empty. Meaning, no intelligence, no character, no moral compass. No, it's a disgrace. No disgrace for a man, even a wise man, to learn many things and not to be too rigid. Meaning, it's okay to bend with the wind. How did Crayon, begin his speech when he found out it was Antigone? I think the leader of the chorus says, she's always been strong-willed, and he says, and those who have strong-willed, who don't bend with adversity, fall the hardest. Haman is saying, bend with the adversity. And he gives the example of trees, not bending. 804, give way, relax your anger, change. What's he mean by change? Crayon's headed in this direction. Where there's a wall and door here, where he's headed, it's a cliff. What is Haman telling him to do? Turn around. In a Christian context, that word is repent. It's all it means. Turn around. Go in the opposite direction. Okay? I'm young. I know I'm young, Dad. I'm just a boy compared to you. But let me offer this. It would be best by far if a man were born infallible, right by nature. If not, things don't often go that way. He's saying, in the best of all possible worlds, when we were born, we'd be born how? Perfect. Without any flaws, without any errors. But what world do we inhabit? Not that one. Things don't often go that way, meaning we make mistakes. It's best to learn from those with good advice. Leader, you should listen to him, my lord. If he's speaking to the point, notice the if, it's another conditional. Okay? Leader's taking both sides, doesn't want to offend Crayon, but, kind of wants to gently nudge him. So we're to be lectured, are we? Schooled by a boy his age? He says that, Crayon says that to the leader. Because he and the leader are both older, 40s, 50s. Haman's late teens, early 20s. Only in what is right. I only want to school you, teach you in what is right. But if I seem young, here he's not talking about physical age. He's talking mental, moral. Right? Because young people can be very wise, depending on the kind of life they've lived and if they've learned from the lessons life has taught them. And old people, some, can be really stupid or unwise, foolish, because they haven't learned from their mistakes. So he says, if I seem young, look less to my years and more to what I do. So, admiring rebels, that's an achievement, meaning his fiancée. You admire your future wife, I'd never suggest that you admire treason. But isn't Antigone treasonous? Crayon asks. Haman. Now he lays it all out there. The whole city of Thebes denies it to a man. What dominates, often tends to dominate, what kind of government do we have? We'll put it that way. Is it that? Or is it this? If we were to say the Pledge of Allegiance, it does not mention this word. And the republic for which it stands. What's the difference between this and this? This is that one vote, each person gets a vote. Pure and simple. This is a little bit different. This is what? This is, out of 15, 20 people in here right now, we elect one person in here to represent us. So it's a democratic republic. Each person gets a vote, but that vote goes to have somebody else stand in for them in a larger kind of context. Okay? The whole city of Thebes. The reason I brought that up, what do we often hear after elections? Who won the popular vote? It doesn't matter in our system. Why? Because we're not a pure democracy. The founders created the electoral college for what purpose? So that you wouldn't get mob rule. If we were a pure democracy, what would a presidential candidate, for example, where would that presidential candidate not go to campaign? You can almost guarantee it. Tennessee wouldn't matter. We've got what, 11, 13 million, something like that? They would go to Texas. They would go to California. They would go to Florida. They would go to New York. They'd go to Illinois. Maybe Atlanta. In other words, they would only hit probably at most 10 states. The 10 largest states. Why? You get the majority of the population, that's it. Okay? Haman is saying, Dad, you are alone in this ideology, in this way of thinking. The whole city of Thebes denies what you're doing. And is Thebes about to tell me how to rule? Now who's talking like a child? Am I to rule this land for others or for myself? Well, our system, who does the president, quote unquote, rule for? Supposedly. And I say supposedly for this president, the previous president, the previous president, the previous president, back. Supposedly everyone. Not the 52% that voted for whoever, okay? It is no city at all owned by one man alone. What? The city is the king's. That's where Crayon just lays it out there. That means what? You take that idea to its logical conclusion. What if the entire city rises up against him? Traitors, rebels, kill them all. What a splendid king you'd make of a desert island, you and you alone. I've said in other classes, talked about George Bush's speech to Congress in 2001, September 20th, 9 days after 9/11. And he said, we're on this great war of terror. We're going to end terror. Speech was great. It's regarded as one of the greatest American speeches, except for that stupid line. How do you end terror? Unless you kill everybody else in the world. Why? Because if there were nobody but us, and I have something, he wants it, he has something, I want it, what do I do to get it? A little bit of terror. What does he do to get it? A little bit of terror. Take 2-year-olds, put them in a playpen, one toy. You just see the beginning of terrorism. Mine, Crayon. This boy's on the woman's side. If you are a woman, yes. Ouch! What's he saying? I'm siding with you. My concern is for you. Dad, you're being an ass. Every president, and we haven't had one that's done this, I don't think. Every president needs somebody who will be the Tiresias, the Haman, etc., to go in and say, Mr. President, you're being a blankety ass. Stop. Turn. You degenerate. Think of what that word literally means. Generate, like generation, like offspring. You fallen from. Well, if you are a woman, and Haman is descended from him, so woman Crayon, woman Eurydice, all right, lesbian marriage kind of thing. He's saying, you degenerate. You are threatening me with justice. I see my father offending justice. What kind of justice? The great, unwritten, unshakable traditions. You think I'm wrong to protect my royal rights? When you trample down the honors of the gods? Remember when I told the story about Agamemnon? And his wife rolls out the red carpet and he's like, I don't know. And he steps on it and he's dead 5 minutes later. Yeah, at her hands, but that's also partially the gods going, told you not to walk on the red carpet. What's Haman trying to get through his thick skull? You go through this, you're going to anger the gods. You don't want the gods ever angry at you. Okay? So they go back and forth. And Crayon eventually suggests, you're going to be on the chopping block too. Haman, top of page 31. You really expect to fling abuse at me and not receive the same? If I haven't, I promise you'll pay. I'm going to kill her now. In front of you. You're going to witness it. He says, nope, not me. And he leaves. What happened last play when we saw somebody in grief rush off the stage into the palace? Eurydice hung herself. Yocasta hung herself. And the leader says, my king, gone my king in a burst of anger, temper young as his. Hurt him once, he may do something violent. Let him. So you're going to kill them both? Both daughters of Oedipus? No, not her whose hands are clean. Showing he can be what? He can be merciful. He can change. But Antigone, what about her? Tell you what I'll do. I'll lock her up in a cave. We'll wall her in a cave. We'll leave her a little bit of food and water. And then I'm not guilty of her death. If the gods want to save her, the gods can save her. Okay? So, he exits. Chorus gives a little speech about love. Okay? Antigone comes in. And she says, look at me, men of my fatherland, setting out on the last road, looking into the last light of day, blah, 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 blah. I go to wed the Lord of the dark waters, Hades. Chorus responds. She thinks, she tells us some stories, thinks of Niobe. It's another Greek myth. We're not going to talk about it. And then she says, 9:30. Why in the name of all my father's gods, why can't you wait till I am gone? Must you abuse me to my face? O my city, all your fine rich sons, and you springs of the Dirce, etc. I go to my rock-bound prison, strange new tomb, always a stranger. O dear God, I have no home on earth and none below, not with the living, not with the breathless dead. She's saying, I have no place. You went too far, the chorus says. The last limits of daring, smashing against the high throne of justice. And again, it's capitalized. I wonder, do you pay for your father's terrible ordeal? And then she goes, that's the problem. You nailed it. Raking up the grief for father 3 times over for all the problems of the house of Laius. Okay? So she says, I'm going to go down to death, unwed, etc. Creon comes in. Okay? And the chorus addresses, not Creon, her. Your own blind will, your passion has destroyed you. Okay? She goes on and she says the exact same thing Oedipus said. I, 967, am agony. No tears, etc. Creon. See, if a man could wail his own dirge before he dies, he'd never finish. Put a gag on her. If we don't stop her from talking, he says, we'll never get to kill her because she'll just, wear out the clock, so to speak. Take her away quickly. So she gets a speech again, and she talks about Eteocles and Polynices, etc., etc. She talks about how she'll never have children, how her father's line eventually will die. Okay? And then she asks, 10:13, we have a couple minutes left. What law of the mighty gods have I transgressed? She's kind of suggesting, I wouldn't be dying if I haven't done something wrong. Why look to the heavens anymore, tormented as I am? Meaning, how can I pray to the gods when I'm going to be killed for doing what I think the gods wanted us to do all along? Bury the dead. Whom to call, what comrades now? Just think, my reverence only brands me, that is reverence for the laws of gods, only brands me for irreverence. Very well, if this is the pleasure of the gods, once I suffer, I will know that I was wrong. Meaning, when I'm dead, then I'll know. Kind of like the misfit, If I'd have been there, I'd know, and I wouldn't be the way I am now. Once I suffer, I will know that I was wrong. But, big but, right? If these men are wrong, let them suffer nothing worse than they mete out to me these masters of injustice. Let them die too. Leader, still the same rough winds, the wild passion raging through. She doesn't know when to shut up. Okay? All right, we'll stop there. We're going to pick up top of 37, and we'll finish this, because we have to. We'll finish this on Wednesday.